Hey guys, so if you regularly watch my channel, you'll know that last week I did a little video about all the Kiss albums that I have. I'm a big Kiss fan, I have to admit. It's true. Today, we're going to do another episode of this series where we talk about my record collection. But today, it's the greatest band of all time, according to almost everyone. It's the Beatles, and it's hard to argue with that. And yes, I have the gorgeous 2012 Beatles in stereo box set, which was given to me as a gift a couple of years back by my family. I have nothing but good things to say about it, and when I pull out some albums from this, I'm sure I'm going to get some flack for, oh, why is it so dinged up? This is dinged up. Don't you keep good care of it? I do, but that's just through overuse. I get a lot of use out of this box set. It's like a nice little rock and roll Bible. Every song the Beatles recorded and put out is like a classic recording that you almost have to own. And they've done a good job of including not only every Beatles album that was released in the UK, but all the non-album cuts by way of past masters as well. And I have a bunch of other Beatles albums that I'm going to be going through as well. I'm going to try to do this in chronological order. And maybe I should have set this up before I started, but hey, that's just how I roll. So of course you got to start it with Please Please Me out of the box set. Again, nothing but good things to say about this box set. They even replicated the original first pressing style black and gold Parlophone stereo label, which is how the first pressing would have looked when it first came out. Although I don't believe it was originally issued in stereo. I believe the first four Beatles albums were only originally issued in mono. I also picked this up at a record store recently. Twist and Shout Canadian 45 with the B-side of There's a Place. These are two songs from the Please Please Me album, but the single I don't think was issued till later. I think the single didn't come out till 64. Then you got With the Beatles. I have 3 copies of this album. First one is an original, I believe, from 1963 in Canada. Beatlemania with the Beatles. This is the OG mono pressing, and this is the coolest album that I own. I'll make this brief because this is already going to be a long video. But in 1963, Capitol had the rights to issue the Beatles music in Canada, but not in the States yet. Those rights belonged to VJ Records back at that time. And Capitol, basically to test the waters, they were already looking to buy out the U.S. Beatles rights because the Beatles were not successful in the U.S. and Capitol wanted to make them successful. And boy, they did. To almost test the waters, they put out this Beatlemania album in Canada. This album was the first LP of the Beatles, with the exception of maybe something with My Bonnie on it, with Tony Sheridan. With the exception of that, this was the first Beatles album available in North America, and it was only available in Canada. That's 3 months before the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan. And I have that, and it's my favorite album, like I said, in my entire collection. I also have both the new versions. The stereo one from the box set and the mono one that came out a couple of years later. And both of these replicate the fabulous old. Different, not black and gold, now just black and yellow, slightly different Parlophone label. And then, of course, this Canadian one is on my favorite centering label of all time, the Capitol Rainbow. I love the Capitol Rainbow. There's nothing like it. Oh, see, I'm already skipping things. I totally forgot these 2 singles. From Me to You. Thank You, Girl. And then, of course, its follow-up, She Loves You, and I'll Get You. Now, what I like is that in Canada, these were issued in Canada in 63. Again, they were issued by VJ in the States, and I believe they sold way better in Canada than they did in the States back in 63. but I'll have to do my research on that. But I like that Capitol in Canada in '63 issued these singles in the same configuration that they were released in their native Britain. Then what do we got? Then what we got is Long Tall Sally. This is another Canadian exclusive album by the Beatles from right before the Beatles' Canadian and American discographies merged. They were still a little bit different here. This is on, again, that beautiful Capitol rainbow that I can't get enough of. And, of course, there's another sleeve in it, and I'm not going to bother taking it out of the sleeve. You're going to have to take my word for that it has the beautiful Capitol rainbow. Okay. And then I have something new by the Beatles. This is a U.S. Well, this is Canadian pressing, but this is up from their U.S. discography, of course. Got some tunes from Hard Day's Night on there. Got some other songs that didn't wind up on albums back then. I also have a single. Oh, wait, but first, Hard Day's Night. I also had a U.S. version of Hard Day's Night, but I gave that as a gift to my sister. And then, oh, right, the single I was going to show you is from the Hard Day's Night album. You've got I'm Happy Just to Dance With You on the one side, and I'll Cry Instead on the other. I believe I'll Cry Instead is the A side, but I'm actually not quite sure. Neither of those tunes was a particularly huge hit for them. Then after that, you've got Beatles for Sale, which is the first in the Beatles catalog, at least on the box set, to have beautiful gatefold, and boy do I love the gatefold. I love this live shot right here. Got the back cover there. Again, we're still going with the black and yellow Parlophone label there. I'm going to have to totally resort this after this video is done. Help, of course. Gotta have Help. Again, just from their regular UK discography that I have courtesy of this box set right here. Ooh, man, I gotta stop forgetting things. I got from Between Hard Day's Night, or from Between Hard Day's Night, yeah, and Beatles for Sale, I have the I Feel Fine, She's a Woman single. I also like the Capitol Swirl singles almost as much as I like their LP centering with the rainbow and whatnot. Then this album that didn't come out till 1977, but was recorded live in 64 and 65, Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. They've just done a total reissue of this album with a different front cover in celebration of that 8 days a week documentary by the Beatles that I haven't actually seen yet. Let me know in the comments if you saw it and you thought it was any good and you think I should check it out, because I just have not gotten around to that yet. Rubber Soul. Yeah, this is when the Beatles start to get a little deeper, start to lean towards the psychedelic. Then I also have another one of the U.S. albums, being Yesterday and Today. Ain't Got No Butcher cover. Look at how destroyed the backside of my copy of this album is. This is a later issue that was actually issued on the Apple-style centering labels. The original version of this will be on that Capitol rainbow. That's a reissue from probably about 1969, 1970, somewhere in there. I think. Not sure. Then I have Revolver, of course, out of the box set. Getting a little more psychedelic. Look at that front cover. Beautiful. Back to the singles. I have... Oh man, look at me. I just can't stop forgetting things. I also have Help with I'm Down. I forgot I had this because I just bought this in Courtney on tour. I just was talking about it. I bought this and the other one that I just mentioned from the Hard Day's Night album, that single. Then I also have, this was the first Beatles single I ever got, The Strawberry Fields Forever with Penny Lane, and I wish, I'm aware that this Capitol label is, or this Capitol sleeve is not of the same generation. This is like a 70s Capitol sleeve with a 60s single inside it. It's mismatched, I know. I wish I had the original picture sleeve that came with that single. Then, of course, we keep going with the box set with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Full lyrics on the back, perhaps the most successful, or at least most critically successful album they ever did. Beautiful gatefold there. This was the last of the classic albums, Beatles albums, to be issued on that black and yellow Parlophone label. I'm not going to dig out the record to show you, but you're going to have to take my word for it. Then you got Magical Mystery Tour. This one, the box set made an exception and included one LP from the Beatles' US catalog. The reason being that it was issued in the UK as a double EP, which was weird, which just had the 6 songs from the film soundtrack. In the US, they took those 6 songs from the film soundtrack, made that side A, and made side B other singles and non-album tracks from 67. Beautiful reproduction of the Capitol Rainbow, as, like I said, this is a US album that they're issuing. Also, they put the booklet inside. The original version of this album had the booklet as actually kind of part of the gatefold. You'd flip through it. But this one, for the box set, they included it as a separate booklet. But it is a full color booklet that's, like, the quality of it is great. They did a really good job reproducing that booklet. Yeah, then you've got White Album. Nothing but white. With the exception, of course, it's hard to tell in the video, but you got the Beatles. Well, if I would show you the right side, you've got the Beatles embossed in there. This was issued, of course. Now you're on to the, the Apple label. I love the Beatles Apple labels in that I can't think of any other center ring label that was different for side 1 from side 2, because, of course, the Apple records always had side 1 as the full apple and side 2 as the kind of half-eaten apple. Of course, you got the gatefold. You have larger versions of these pictures inside here, just as they were originally issued when this album came out, and there's also a poster in there. So that's a great product. Again, Yellow Submarine, and it's kind of puzzling to me why they even bothered including this album in the box set. Side 1 is 6 Beatles songs, 2 of which can be found elsewhere in this box set. So this album really only gives you 4 Beatles songs that you can't get anywhere else, even in the box set. And side 2 is all orchestral score stuff from the album arranged by, or orchestrated by, George Martin. I guess they included this because literally the only reason I can think of is that they couldn't fit those 4 tracks on Past Masters. That must be it. I think that if when Past Masters came out there was room for those 4 songs, they wouldn't have bothered issuing this album with it. But it's a cool thing to have. Like, I'm glad I have it. Then let's go back into singles world, shall we? Which is the world I live in permanently because I'm always single. Singles world. Get Back. This is the only time that the Beatles weren't credited as just the Beatles. They are the Beatles with Billy Preston, who played keyboards. B-side is Don't Let Me Down. And it's on that beautiful, I love this sleeve, hey? The Beatles on Apple. That was a mismatch. It was a different single I got. It was actually like a Wing single, and it came in a The Beatles on Apple thing, and I was like, whoa, I gotta change that. I gotta put a Beatles single in there. I've done some switching around with the labels. See, this is a standard stock Apple thing, but for Beatles releases, they would put the Beatles on Apple. So this isn't probably the original sleeve they would have had for this one. This one is Ballad of John and Yoko with Old Brown Shoe. I love the song Ballad of John and Yoko, and I just learned that that's actually Paul McCartney on the drums on that track, not Ringo. Abbey Road, 69, the last Beatles album recorded, but the next to last Beatles album in terms of releases. It's also not only my favorite Beatles album, but this, I think, takes the cake as my favorite album of all time, period. Especially the medley on side 2 just blows me away every single time. I've heard it a million times and it never gets old. I also have this bizarre red label capital version of Abbey Road that's been completely scribbled on. The reason I have this is because I was flipping through like a flea market pile of albums, and I think this was inside a Grateful Dead album. Like, I thought I was getting a Grateful Dead album, and then I opened it and I'm like, oh, I didn't even open and check what album was actually in it. It's scribbled up pressing of Abbey Road. Weird. From the 70s. It's scribbled on 70s Abbey Road reissue. Okay. And then, before even Let It Be, because this album was released before Let It Be, Paul McCartney's first solo album, simply called McCartney. And no, this is the back cover. This is the front cover with the bowl of grapes. It's got the gatefold here. Big legal battle between Paul McCartney and the rest of the Beatles over who would get to release their album first. The Beatles as an artist or Paul McCartney as an artist, and he won out that battle. It's famous that he wasn't a fan of the way that this album here, Let It Be, sounded when it was originally released. He didn't like what Phil Spector had done to it when they gave it to him. He liked the original George Martin produced version, and so about 10-15 years ago, Paul McCartney wound up issuing Let It Be Naked, which is what he wanted it to be without all the added like strings and overdubs that George Martin did. I mean, I like this album. But I get it as an artist. If you intended the songs to be heard one way and then they weren't, you'd be like, what the hell? If you got a copy of your own album and it's like, that's not how I expected that to sound. And then, of course, Past Masters. Now, again, this album was originally issued in 1988 as a double album, Past Masters Volume 1 and Past Masters Volume 2. Sorry, not as a double album, as two separate single albums. And then in 2009, when they issued the Beatles box set on CD, and they made the stereo remasters for the second time, they conglomerated the two into one double album, which became Past Masters. Contains 33 songs. Basically every song and every recording that didn't wind up on any of the other Beatles albums, so that by getting this box set you could get the entire Beatles catalog. And it also comes with this spectacular full color book which talks about the making of each of the albums and just has some great studio shots in it. Nice to have. All Things Must Pass, with a huge, someone back in the day apparently used this as a coaster at some point. Thank you for that. I'm not even going to open this one. This one's pretty fragile, but it's got, take my word for it, it's got all 3 albums in there, including the Apple Jam bonus disc, which isn't great. You know, I don't know why George felt the need like he had to issue that as well. I don't know. Maybe because now he only had to sell like 300,000 copies if he wanted to go platinum, since it's a triple album. Who knows? You never know. Ram, Paul and Linda McCartney from 71. I'm going on and covering what Beatles solo stuff I have as well. Ram. The Paul McCartney solo stuff, like the first album and then Ram, not my cup of tea. Although Too Many People is a good song. And of course, Maybe I'm Amazed is a masterpiece. Besides those 2 songs, I never got into Paul McCartney's solo at all. I did get into Wings, though, and I have several Wings albums in here. Have I skipped any singles? Sure have. From 1970, John "Oh No" Lennon, Instant Karma. What an amazing song. We all shine on. And the Yoko Ono track on the B-side, Who Has Seen the Wind. All in all, Who Has Seen the Wind is one of the more tolerable Yoko Ono compositions. There aren't a lot. That's one of them. Also have John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band and their smash success, Imagine. I don't have the album. I don't have the Imagine album, but at least I have the single, with It's So Hard on the B-side. Nice to see a John Lennon single with a John Lennon song on the B-side. Usually they'd put a Yoko cut on the B-side. Am I being too hard on Yoko? Can you be too hard on Yoko? Who knows? Wings, 73, Red Rose Speedway. Again, like I told you, I really enjoy the music of Wings. I also have Live and Let Die, which was not issued on a Wings studio album. It was just a single. It was, however, issued on, if you have Wingspan, their greatest hits collection. It is on that. I don't have it, though. Band on the Run. This copy is destroyed. I think I got it in like a wholesale lot of a bunch of other stuff, and is absolutely waterlogged to all hell, and it barely plays. I desperately need an upgrade copy of Band on the Run. Then you got, see, I'm pretty Paul McCartney heavy with my post Beatles, the Beatles solo career type stuff. But I do have a copy of Venus and Mars from '75, solid album. Speaking of solid albums, Wings at the Speed of Sound from 1976 had a couple of big hits on it, like Silly Love Songs and Let 'Em In. And then on the tour for that album, they made an absolutely mammoth triple live album, Wings Over America. I love this thing. It's mostly Wings songs, but Paul threw in a couple of Beatles classics for good measure as well on that tour. I'm a huge fan of live albums. I love live albums. I love to collect them. And so that's a cornerstone of my live albums collection, as is Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl. I also have the With a Little Luck single by Wings in '78. I like the custom centering label. The B-side, yes, the sleeve is absolutely falling apart. The B-side has a little mini medley of 2 cuts. It has the song Backwards Traveler and Cufflink on that B-side. Then I have, from 1980, Paul McCartney returns to his solo career with McCartney 2. He'd already been a very prolific artist in the 10 years since the Beatles had broken up. But no, you're not reading that wrong. Even in 1980, 10 years into Paul's solo career, this is technically only his second solo album. His first one being the McCartney album from 1970. Technically, Ram is not considered a solo album, as it is credited to Paul and Linda McCartney. By this point, Paul was on Columbia Records. This is when he was going back and forth between record labels. Did I show you the gatefold yet? I can't remember. Then, of course, I also have the infamous Double Fantasy album, John and Yoko. And I have a single from that album as well. I've got Geffen Records now, is what John was recording on. His last single, I can't remember if this single was issued posthumously, but it's just like Starting Over. And like I said about John Lennon singles, the B-side is Yoko. It's Kiss, Kiss, Kiss. That's about it for my Beatles and Beatles-related collection, although I do also have Say, Say, Say from, I believe, '82. The single, that's Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson from Paul McCartney's 1982 album, Pipes of Peace. Is it on Pipes of Peace? Pipes of Peace. It is. B-side is, I haven't heard this song yet, but it's some song that Paul McCartney wrote called Ode to a Koala Bear. Interesting. Alrighty, that about does it for my Beatles collection. Thank you so much for watching. I'm also a singer-songwriter. For those of you who don't know, you can check out my description for a full list of all the tour dates that I have planned in the future. Also, wherever my music can be sold or streamed online. Subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new video, which will be tomorrow and every day for the foreseeable future. Like this video if you liked what you saw. thank you so much for watching. Like I said, new video tomorrow. Check it out. Thanks for watching.